طيب. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me hear a better response, inshallah. We're very low on time, so let's try to get this, inshallah, as quick as possible. And let's all try to learn as much as possible, inshallah. So one more time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I love this. So inshallah, the original topic for this lecture was supposed to be contemplation about the Quran, but alhamdulillah, because we have a large gathering of children and adults and parents and mashallah, daughters and boys and girls, and mashallah, it's a great gathering. Inshallah, we're going to talk about something that is not given the proper attention it deserves among the Muslim community. And that is the proper and the balanced relationship between the parents and the children in Islam. And how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ articulated that through actions, through the ways he dealt with children, inshallah. So this is going to be geared towards that. So how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ dealt with the children around him, inshallah. Now I want to begin, inshallah, by telling you that most of the narrations that we have from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and how he dealt with children comes from Anas ibn Malik. Who can tell me why most of it comes from Anas ibn Malik? Who can tell me why most of the narration comes from Anas ibn Malik? Anybody? Well, because Anas ibn Malik spent the majority of his childhood, very early part of his age, at a very young age, he spent most of his time with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, serving him in his own household. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and Anas ibn Malik spent a lot of time together. And Anas ibn Malik was a child, a very young boy. So he noticed and witnessed and saw how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ dealt with the children, and it registered within him more. He remembered it more, he recalled it more, because he himself was a child. So inshallah, we're going to begin with one of the narrations that Anas ibn Malik tells us. Anas ibn Malik tells us one day he was sitting in the Prophet Muhammad's room. Okay, he's sitting down in the Prophet Muhammad's room. And Al-Hasan comes, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, comes into the room. He comes very close to the place where the Prophet Muhammad is sleeping. And then he comes and crawls on top of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad is just resting a little bit, but Al-Hasan comes and he basically removes the cover that's covering the Prophet Muhammad, revealing the Prophet Muhammad's navel or belly button. So the navel or the belly button of the Prophet Muhammad is revealed. And now what Al-Hasan does is he's a little child, he doesn't know any better, right? So he urinates, or he pees on the Prophet Muhammad, right? He pees on the Prophet Muhammad's belly button. So imagine what, just imagine right now, imagine if this was your dad or this was an old man in the community or whatnot, and this happened to him. He would go ridiculous. What are you doing? Shame on you, how dare you do this? Exactly. One of the children here, he showed us what most of our parents would do these days. Right? But the Prophet Muhammad was very patient. Anas ibn Malik says, I got up and I was ready to go take Al-Hasan away from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told me, leave him alone, let him be, don't interrupt him, let him finish. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ very patiently waited until the Al-Hasan was done. Then after Al-Hasan was finished, he of course poured water, purified the location, and carried on very beautifully, very patiently, without resorting to anger, without saying anything negative. But this shows you how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was. And this is not just one isolated incident. The Prophet Muhammad's whole life and the way he dealt with children resonates throughout and shows us how he was and how loving he was towards the children, subhanAllah. Anas ibn Malik tells us that the Prophet Muhammad had a specific time slot that was dedicated to children. So there was a specific time in his schedule every single day when he would actually spend with children. And some of the things that he would do is he would actually help with the naming of newborn children. He would also be there, carrying the cultural heritage of the Ansar. The Ansar really loved the dates, right? They really, really loved the dates. And what they would do is they had this cultural, basically a rite of passage where once a child is born, they would take the beautiful dates and they would basically feed it to a little boy. And the Prophet Muhammad would actually, because he loves the children, he doesn't want them to they're very young children, very young newborn. So what he would do is he would take the dates, he would chew it for them until it's very soft. He would chew it until it's very soft, and once it's very soft and moist, almost juicy, then he would give it to the children. SubhanAllah, out of the love that he had for the children. And so this is something that many of the people around the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, especially the Ansar, would do to the children, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would do it for them, subhanAllah. Now, one of the other narrations that Anas ibn Malik tells us, two narrations, and these inshallah will make us all inshallah laugh. Islam. The first is Anas ibn Malik was told by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, here is a message, take it and deliver to the specific person. Now Anas ibn Malik goes, delivers the message, and then he gets carried away. He comes back very late. When he comes back, he sees the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ waiting for him at the exact same spot where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ originally gave him the message. Now Anas ibn Malik was a smart boy. He says, and he thinks to himself and reflects, he says, the message that was given to me by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not require a response. So I knew the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not waiting there to hear the response of the man I delivered the message to. He was only waiting there to make sure that I arrived safely and that I was okay. Imagine the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taking the time off his busy schedule, all the things that he has to do, and sitting there and waiting for that man to come, for Anas ibn Malik to come back to make sure that he's okay. SubhanAllah, look at the love that he had for the children around him, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Another one is Anas ibn Malik. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ tells him, go deliver this message. Now Anas ibn Malik is walking down the street. He's a little kid. Imagine a little kid walking down the street, and he sees other little kids playing. Like this guy here with the balloon, right? So he sees the other little kids playing. And then he starts playing with them, hide and seek. Then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ comes and he's walking down and he sees Anas ibn Malik playing. Now he doesn't tell him, what are you doing? I told you to deliver the message. Shame on you. What are you playing a little game when you have something important to do? What is wrong with you? Boom. No, he didn't do that. He came to him, and he actually came to him from behind and surprised him. He covered his eyes from behind. So imagine a little Anas ibn Malik, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ comes and he covers his eyes with his fingers from behind. And Anas ibn Malik says, I heard him say, who is it? Who is it? Who could it be? Who could it be? Guess who I am? So imagine the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is playing with Anas ibn Malik. He's covering his eyes. Like, guess who could it be? Who could it be? And Anas ibn Malik says, I knew it was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ because of two things. Once I felt the texture, the soft texture of his fingers on my face. And it was very distinct of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And also I smelled his fingers, and they had a very beautiful, almost musk-like smell. And it was his natural body odor, right? Nothing artificial, it was just naturally how he smelled. And he said, I knew it was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but I liked his company and I wanted to play along. So I started saying, I don't know, who could it be? Who could it be? Who could it be? And he's not looking behind, he's like, I don't know, who could it be? And then the Prophet ﷺ puts his hands away, he turns around, Anas ibn Malik turns around and sees the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and says, oh, it is you. And Anas ibn Malik sees the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ smiling, and then he shyly remembers that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told him to take a message and to deliver. He's like, oh, okay, snap, I have to deliver the message. So now he's like, okay, I will get to it, inshallah, O Messenger of Allah. Very smiling, he walks away to deliver the message. But look at the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ dealt and played and how playful he was with children. In that is a beautiful reminder for all of us to learn from, especially as parents. SubhanAllah, some of us, we tend to have, very, very strong, and we think that, displaying love or affection for the parents is a sign of weakness. We like for our children to always have that respect towards us or whatnot, and to always look at us with this, it shouldn't be that way. There should be, resonation of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sunnah, and that is the sunnah of mutual love and mutual respect. Another one is Jabir ibn Thamra, and he tells us a beautiful narration. He says, my mom told me to go spend as much time as possible with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He was a little kid, so he says, okay, I walked to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's masjid, I went into the masjid, and I saw the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ praying. He told Bilal to give the adhan, then he gave the adhan, Bilal gave the adhan, then the iqamah, and then he said, I prayed behind the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Imagine he's a little child. I prayed behind the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and then I remember that my mom told me to follow the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ wherever he goes. So then he was also shy. He was just a little kid. He didn't know how to approach the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So listen to this carefully. He says, after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ finished the salam and greeted a few people, talked to a few people, he started walking away from the masjid. And then Jabir continues and he says, I started following the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ because his mom told him to follow the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So he said, I started following him. And it was a habit of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to not look back. He would not look back. He would always look and he would continue walking in his path. And he had a very, we can talk later about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's walk, but he would not look back. And so he did not notice that this boy was behind him. So he continued going and going and going, and then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came and he saw two little boys playing. So he came and he started playing with them and basically making dua for them, touching their hair and just enjoying the time with them. And then the little boy that was, Jabir was following the Prophet Muhammad, he's like, whoa, he felt jealous. He's like, what about me? Why don't I get this? So he runs to the Prophet Muhammad at the front and he says, I'm a little boy too. Right? Play with me too. Prophet Muhammad starts playing with Jabir, and of course the narration is a long one, but he makes dua for Jabir, and Jabir says, when the Prophet Muhammad put his hands on my cheek, I felt the coolness, the very beautiful temperature of the Prophet Muhammad's hands, and he remembered this till a very, very late stage in his life. And the Prophet Muhammad would nickname Zainab, and he would call her Zawainab. Like the modern day, imagine if someone is named Catherine, would call her Kate, right? Or whatever, some nickname of that nature. So he would nickname his children, would nickname the grandchildren, would nickname the general children, and this resonates throughout the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this is another funny story, inshallah. And pay attention to this one, especially the young sisters in the audience. Alhamdulillah. So there was Zainab was a little girl. She was walking and she walked into the house of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and she walked in on the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ while he was doing ghusl, while he was showering. Okay? So she walks in on the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ while he's taking a shower. Now if this happened in modern day, and I'll tell you a very similar story that I witnessed with my own eyes 15 years ago, and we'll compare that story with the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ dealt with the situation. So it was a sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, even when he was taking a shower, he would cover from the navel to the knee. From the basically the belly button to the knee, even if he's taking a shower. And this is one of the neglected sunnahs that we don't even care about, we don't even learn about, we don't even discuss. Subhanallah. But this shows you how modest the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, even in his own private time. Subhanallah. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he's surprised to see Zainab, but he's very patient, very wise. So he takes a little bit of the water, and he was called her Zawainab. He would take a little bit of the water that he's bathing with or making ghusl with, and he basically started sprinkling Zainab. He's like, right? And he gently requested for her to head out to give him that privacy. SubhanAllah, imagine that. And Zainab says, I grew up, and she was very old. She was like in her 60s. And she says, even at a very late age, and all the people around in Medina confirm this, they said her face still had the most youthful look out of all the other women in Medina, because of that water that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sprinkled on her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but there's no doubt that there was barakah in the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And of course, while he was alive, he did share that barakah with many of the people that he was around with. Now imagine if this was happening during our time. Imagine if you walked in on somebody taking a shower. I remember once, so I'm just getting the time inshallah. Hopefully inshallah we'll have more time inshallah to share as many stories as possible. But the Prophet, just a little bit of a story. I remember 15 years ago, right? Walked in, we're having a gathering at somebody's house, and there was a little girl. She walked in, right? She walked in on one of the men who was very old. He was like 70s, in his 70s or 80s, and he was taking a shower. And he got so scared, he started cursing and saying the most vulgar words in the Arabic language possible. And wallahi, because they're so vulgar and the situation was so scary, as a child, I was very young at the time, but I still remember them till this day. The words in the exact same sequence. And I remember coming home and telling my mom, what do these words mean? She's like, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What did you hear these words? But this goes to show you that children will remember the things and the ways and the comments and the behavior you show towards them and direct towards them, and they will resonate this throughout later on in their own life. So be careful in the way you deal with difficult situations. Be gentle in the way you advise your children. Have that beautiful love and beautiful passion and compassion the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had for the people around him, and had for the passion that he had for treating everybody around him with the best of akhlaq and the best of manners. Another one is Mahmud ibn Rabi'. He says, we were playing with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Mahmud ibn Rabi' was 5 years old. Remember this. Mahmud ibn Rabi' was 5 years old when he was playing around in the street with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ passing by. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ saw them, Mahmud ibn Rabi' and his friends who were playing around with water. So he came to them and he didn't tell them, oh, what are you doing? Why are you playing? Go do something more useful. He actually took some water and he sprinkled Mahmud ibn Rabi'. He was 5 years old. And this was the first time he met the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it was also the very last time he met the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ passed away right after, like a few weeks, some say a few months, right after. So this goes to show you that even the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was playful, even towards the end of his life, even when he was very old, even when he was very frail and very ill, he still had the time to spend with the children that were around him. And in that is a beautiful, beautiful reminder for all of us. And believe it or not, Al-Bukhari, he actually has a whole chapter called Bab Yasihhu Sama' As-Saghir. A chapter named, and it's called the chapter of it's permissible to hear or to listen to the young boy, because he was 5 years old when he narrated when this happened to him, and he narrated this later, and the narration came towards Al-Bukhari, and Al-Bukhari basically actually wrote a whole chapter for him, you know, the chapter Bab Sama' As-Saghir, right, named after him. So this goes to show you how authentic this narration is, and how touching it was for Al-Bukhari to even hear about this narration. Now, who's the guy that we're talking about that narrates all this? Anas ibn Malik. Not Mahmoud ibn Rabi' is the 5-year-old. Good job, though. So Anas ibn Malik continues and he narrates another one. He says, once the Prophet Muhammad was walking and he saw Al-Husayn ibn Ali, Al-Husayn, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, he was playing. And the Prophet Muhammad came to him, started walking towards him, and he started saying, "Sa'amsikuka ya Husayn, Sa'amsikuka ya Husayn, I'm going to catch you, Husayn, I'm going to catch you, I'm going to catch you." And then Husayn would be running away from the Prophet Muhammad, zigzagging in and out, right and left, zigzagging, and the Prophet Muhammad was right behind him. So imagine that he's zigzagging and the Prophet Muhammad is not like, "What are you doing? Come on, do something more. Come here, you're the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. You gotta be serious, you gotta be tough, I gotta teach you." None of that. The Prophet Muhammad was actually playing and enjoying that comfort right behind him and having basically a mini game of chase with his grandchildren. Now he caught Al-Husayn and he held him very carefully, very, very tightly, and he told him, he said, "Oh Allah, bear witness that I love him, so love him, O Allah." Imagine that. Not only does he say, "I love you," and he's very verbal in showing that love, and very physical in showing that love, and very careful to express his love towards the children in general, but he would also be making dua for the children and saying, "Ya Allah, love them as much as I love them." And of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the youngsters, and we're going to see that inshallah. The Prophet Muhammad in this, of course he said, "Husayn minni wa ana min Husayn." Husayn is of me and I am of Husayn. It shows you how much he loved his grandchildren, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course the Prophet Muhammad was also, not only did he share the joys with other children, he showed their pains as well. And of course the pains of children or the tragedies of children are not going to be as tough and as tragic, as difficult as the tragedies that we're going to experience as adults. But we'll see one example. This thing is very, it's very echoey, huh? Right? Is it loud?
No, it's good now.
It's okay? Khair inshallah. So he actually once came across and he saw Abu Umayr. This was the nickname he gave him, a little kid. Imagine this little kid. This little kid just lost his bird. Listening? Stay with me for a second. Bear with me. So this little kid just lost his bird. The little bird passed away. So the Prophet Muhammad comes to him. He doesn't tell him, "Oh, come on, man, it's just a little bird. You're crying like a little baby over a little bird. Oh, dry up the tears. Be a man. Be tough." None of that. The Prophet Muhammad came to him and he started soothing him with rhymes and beauty and started smiling with him. And he tells him, "Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'ala al-Nughayr. Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'ala al-Nughayr." Oh, Aba Umayr. He nicknames him. He tells him, "Oh, Aba Umayr, what happened to the Nughayr?" Which is the bird. He gave the bird also a nickname as well. "Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'ala al-Nughayr." And he continued smiling with him till the boy himself began to smile and he forgot that the bird passed away. But subhanAllah, the way we would deal with the situation, if you see a baby crying or a little guy crying, a little child crying because of a cat or a dog or a whatnot, an animal that passed away or whatnot, a bird, whatnot passed away, you would come and be like, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." He's a little bird, he passes away. Till you think about your grandmother that passed away, you didn't even cry this much. Right? And you would put the child in more distress than prior to the conversation you've had with him. But this was not the way of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He had a way with the children, alhamdulillah. And of course, one of the best ways to show how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ loved the children is of course his beautiful hadith in which he says, "I am the sponsor of the orphan, أنا وكافل اليتيم كهاتين في الجنة." Right? He says, "I and the sponsor of the orphan are like this in Jannah." And he pointed to the two fingers, the index and the middle finger. like this in Jannah. And this goes to show you how he cared even for those who didn't have parents to show them that love, who didn't have that familial support and that compassion, right? They didn't have that. So the Prophet Muhammad took it upon himself to ensure that those people received the best of attention, received the best of love from himself. And when he couldn't handle it all, he requested for the Sahaba and the companions, and he showed them how much blessing they get in Jannah by caring and showing that attention and giving that attention to the sponsors. And we know the Prophet Muhammad would delay his sujood. Remember when he was in his sujood, he delayed it for so long that the people behind him started asking, what happened to you? Why are you delaying your sujood so long? Did he die? Is revelation coming to him? This could possibly be the longest revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave. This is the longest surah that Allah is going to give to the Prophet Muhammad. It's taken so long. Everybody started questioning, and then the Prophet Muhammad continued, and salam alaikum, salam. Then they asked him, why did you make it so long? He said, one of my grandchildren, Hassan, came on top of my back while I was in the sujood. So I increased the time to pray, so I don't interrupt the time of his playing. Imagine that. He increased the pray time so he doesn't interrupt his play time. Imagine that. Imagine this is the greatest worship and act of worship that we can do to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praying. Yet the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually elongates that so he doesn't interrupt the time of his grandson playing. Which goes to show you how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. And the other is also true. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying, one of the little kids began to cry at the back. So the Prophet Muhammad rushed the salah quickly, and it was his sunnah that whenever someone was crying at the back, especially a child was crying at the back, a very young child, he would rush the salah, which is the greatest act of worship. He would rush the salah, so he gives the mother enough time to take care of the child, and he also at the same time, he couldn't have that concentration while the baby is crying. He couldn't. It was difficult for him. SubhanAllah. So he would continue rush the salah quickly so that the baby would be united with the mother. And the mother, of course, the mother in that time, her heart would be crying for that baby too. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu would be conscious and aware of that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And of course we know from the multiple narrations that after any ghazwa, right, after any Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See the curiosity of the children. We're going to have one story inshallah that goes to show you how curious the children were around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. Leave him, let him do his thing as long as he doesn't break the camera, inshallah. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, when he would be coming back from battles, and we mentioned this, when he would be coming back from conquests and battles, very hard times and very difficult times, the very first people to come and approach him were the children, and they would want to play with him. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would actually have that time with them, and he would take that time to play with them, even though he just came back from battle. When many of us would just be coming back from work, which is like a 9-hour shift or a 12-hour shift, whatnot, and then would be like, come on man, I'm tired, I just came from work, I'm feeding you, I'm clothing you, I'm sheltering you, I'm giving you a home and a house and money. That's enough, don't get out of here, go play with your toys. No, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not like that. Even when he came back from battle, for months battle, he would still come back and he would have that time for the children. Once the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was approached by Al-Aqra', and Al-Aqra' told him, he saw the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ kissing and hugging all the children, especially his grandchildren, Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein. And then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was very shocked to hear Al-Aqra' saying, I have 10 children. And I don't do this thing to them. I don't show them any love, or like, what is this kissing and hugging and stuff that you're talking about? I have 10 of them and I don't show them that. So then the Prophet Muhammad said, what can I do to you if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken the rahmah away from your heart? What is it of me? Like what am I supposed to do when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken the rahmah from your heart? Showing us that to show love to the children is not a sign of weakness. It's not, especially if you're a man. So a lot of us culturally have this idea engraved in mind where you're supposed to be the strong man, let the women do all the hugging and kissing and whatnot, and you just be there, I'm the man, right? No, the Prophet Muhammad was not like that. He was the best man. So don't think that none of us can even think about the possibility of being on equal footing with any of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, let alone the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself. And so, subhanAllah, sometimes we have this inferiority complex where we're afraid that our manliness will be compromised by showing that. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was so, brave and so conscious and so full of and aware of his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he was not afraid to show that love in his heart. And of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين, and we have only sent you, and we have sent you merely as a mercy to all of humankind. And of course the human child is of course one of the most deserving of that kindness as Muslims and as humans in general. Once the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was approached by a lady, and she told him, my son is very sick. My son is very sick. Can you make dua for him, and can you do ruqya for him? And how many of you guys know how ruqya works? Put your hand up if you know how a ruqya works. Some hands are up, alhamdulillah. So most of the time you'll be reading some Quran, and then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would gently blow air in this nature on the boy while reading the Quran on the child. So the child would be there listening to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ reading Quran. And the child, of course, is curious, he loves to mimic, so he started doing that with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is holding the baby, he's reading Quran on him, gently blowing, and then the boy will be spitting on the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ will be like, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the little kid will be like, spitting water and spitting all kinds of stuff. He's sick. Imagine that. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not say, ew, what is this? Take this thing away from me, this disgusting little thing. No. He was actually holding him, and he remained, and he just wiped it away and continued doing the ruqya. And the mother was like, please let me take him away from you, it's okay. No, we don't need no ruqya. He's like, wait, be patient, and let him be. Look at the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was giving a khutbah once. Listen to this carefully. He's giving a khutbah once, and he sees these little kids. They're coming into the masjid, little children walking into the masjid, Al-Hasan al-Husayn, his grandchildren. And they're wearing thobes, but the thobes are very long. They're very long. So they're tripping. The little kids are tripping. They're like walking, like, they can't walk because they're too long for them. So they're tripping. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ like he's tripping there. He's afraid, like, oh, what am I, subhanAllah, these children, what if they fall? So he stops the khutbah, comes down the mimbar, rushes to the little kids, picks them up, gets back on the mimbar, holding them, and continues his khutbah. Imagine that. Imagine that. And if this was us, imagine if you're giving a khutbah and someone does that, and or one of us is in a situation like that. Whose parents are these kids? Who took these kids shopping? Who bought them these long dresses that are like 10 times their size? Who is this? Who is this? Right? Or like if it's an old uncle, he would come back and like, please, the father or the mother of these children, please take them and keep them with you. Right? We hear this announcement all the time. Right? No, and I know this announcement was made right now, but no, nothing intended, alhamdulillah. Right? We know that and we talked about some of the stories before in the series. So just to brush them up, I know we have a few new faces, inshallah. So we'll just deliver, inshallah, one or two of them to remind ourselves. Once the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ heard a boy, he was hearing. So the boy was hearing the adhan of Bilal. So the boy started making and copying the adhan of Bilal. And so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came and he told him, listen, I heard you say that you can do better than Bilal. Let me hear it. And then the boy started doing the adhan, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually, after hearing his adhan, he saw that the adhan was very beautiful, and after he accepted Islam, even though he was a very young boy, he assigned him to become a muezzin. So we see how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was very cautious to see whoever was able to perform the function and the task, he would give it to them. He was not, he's not going to say, you're a child, stay away, don't do the adhan, you're too young and whatnot. He would actually encourage the children, once they had fit the proper age, of course, fiqh-wise, to of course go on and carry the adhan. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, showing you how honest and how responsible he was, he once came and he saw Al-Hasan in another narration of Hussein. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. He was in the charity house where all the sadaqah would be collected in terms of dates and whatnot, in terms of the small tamar. And he saw that the children, he saw that Al-Hasan would pick one of the sadaqah, right, one of the charity tamars, and he was about to eat it, and then he rushed across and he gently tapped him on the finger, and he told him, kikh and kikh, This is not for us. This is the food of charity, not to be eaten by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu La zakat al-Qurayshi. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu made it very clear that the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu was exempt from taking any of the charity money or any of the sadaqah money. And this goes to show you how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu was quick and very assertive in ensuring that his mission was solely for the sake of Allah and not to generate any income or any profit. And this in itself is a beautiful iman booster for us. But you see the way the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu taught the children from very early on honesty and trustworthiness, and this is why we grew up to be the most honest and the most trustworthy of people. And we know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu had people like Samra ibn Jundub. He would sit with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu in the circles of knowledge. Nobody was young enough to sit in the circle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and learn. He would welcome the youngest of people, and he actually allowed Umar ibn Salama to lead the salah at a very young age. So it's supposed to show you he would welcome the youngsters. He would be there to cherish them, to support them, and to give them that time. When Umar ibn Salama at the same time came with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and he was eating from all over the plate, the Prophet Muhammad gave him the gentle advice, and he told him, Ya ghulam, sammillah, wa kul bi yaminik, wa kul mimma yalik. O ghulam, mention the name of Allah, eat from what is in front of you, and eat from and eat with your right hand. SubhanAllah. Very gently. Not, Ya Allah, what is this? What are you doing? Why are you putting your hand everywhere in the food? You're making the food disgusting. Nobody's going to eat from now on. You disgusted us all. Where did you learn your manners? Where did you learn your etiquette? Where's the adab? None of that. Very gently, very, very quickly advising. He doesn't spend time saying, don't, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done this. He quickly jumps in, he gives him the advice, do this, do this, do this. Staying away from that, the guilt. Because the Prophet Muhammad, he knows that these young children are going to grow up to carry the araya of Islam, carry the future of Islam. And at the same time, he wants to advise them and make them better. He doesn't want to distance the gap between them. He doesn't want them to fill them with guilt and make them feel more distance and away. He wants to bring them closer to Islam and bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why he, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, taught us many beautiful ways through his sunnah. And these are just, I don't know how many stories I mentioned, but there's still 6 pages left. Subhanallah, there's more we can mention, inshallah. And I know the brother is looking at me and telling me, the time, everybody's hungry, everybody wants to eat. But I want to leave you, inshallah, with just a few reminders of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and some of the things that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us. He said, "Kafa bil mar'i ithman an yudayya man ya'ud." This is for all the parents in the audience. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "It is enough of a sin for an individual to basically jeopardize the amana or the trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, that he has to take care of his dependents." So if you jeopardize the amana, the trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you while taking care of your children, taking care of your youngsters, your sons or daughters, that is a great ithm. It's enough of a sin. The Prophet Muhammad reminds us of that. The Prophet Muhammad tells us, whoever has 3 daughters, listen to this guys, especially the parents, whoever has 3 daughters, 3 sisters, or 2 daughters and 2 sisters, فَأَكْرَمَهُنَّ وَأَحْسَنَ إِلَيْهِنَّ كَانَ لَهُ وَكُنَّ لَهُ سِتْرًا مِنْ نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ. Whoever has, 3 daughters or 3 sisters or 2 daughters or 2 sisters, and he is generous and kind to them, and he is good to them, وَأَحْسَنَ إِلَيْهِنَّ, they will be, if he does that to them, they will be like a barrier between him and hellfire. Imagine that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَنْ وَسَّعَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ فَلْيُوَسِّعَ عَلَى عِيَالِهِ. Whoever Allah has granted lots and given him as a lot, so let him give a lot to the children, to the people that are dependent on him. So when you see Allah giving you a lot, don't be stingy and be like, I'm going to save this for the... No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes provides you so that you can provide for the children. He gives you not just because you deserve it. He gives you because the children that are trusted within you, within your possession, within your responsibility, they are the ones that also need, and they are the ones that are in need. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so the Prophet Muhammad reminded us that spending on our children is sadaqah. So don't think, I need to give sadaqah here and there. Spend on your own children. That in itself is the greatest of sadaqah. Abu Dawood narrates another narration from the Prophet Muhammad. He says, "Man kana indahu bint Listen to this carefully. For all the people who say Islam is an unjust religion, there's no equality between men and women, no freedom, and all that nonsense. So please, yani, let's actually look at what the Islam actually is. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, he says, "Man kana عنده بنت فلم يئدها ولم يهنها ولم يفضل ولده عليها دخل الجنة." SubhanAllah, imagine that. He says whoever has a girl, a baby girl, like a girl, and he does not bury her alive, which was the habit of the Jahili Arabs. He doesn't bury her alive, and he doesn't disrespect her, and he doesn't show humiliation towards her. He doesn't allow her to feel that emotional inferiority, and he doesn't prefer his boys over her. He doesn't prefer the males over her. It is for him, if he does that, Jannah, he shall enter it. دخل الجنة. He will enter Jannah by showing that loving and caring to love and care to the girls around the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And one more, inshallah, we'll finish by this. Actually, we'll finish two more, inshallah. Just give me 2 more minutes. Is that okay? Yeah. 2 more minutes, inshallah, we'll finish. Okay? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Aisha tells the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, "O Messenger of Allah, I was at home and this mother came and knocked on the door, and she had 2 girls with her. 2 girls with her, and they were begging for food. I didn't have anything except dates. So I gave one to the girl, one to the other girl, and one to the mother. Then the girls were so hungry that they ate it in front of me. And the mother, she felt so bad feeling how hungry her children were, so she took a date, her date, the one that Aisha gave to her, she cut it in half and she gave it to the 2 girls. And Aisha was touched by that, but she didn't have anything else to give. So she tells the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ how touching it was to see the mother do that for her children. Then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, "بَشِّرِيهَا بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ لَهَا الْجَنَّةِ." Give her the glad tidings that Allah has written for her Jannah. Imagine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for her Jannah because of this little act that she did. Now, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he resonated this and he taught this to the companions. And this goes to show you, I'm going to give you one example, inshallah. There's many, as I mentioned, but this final one, inshallah, with which will end. Umar ibn Khattab, he had a meeting with some of the state leaders, because he had a few, the Islamic Empire was, a few estates, and one of the people, Umar ibn Khattab himself, assigned him to become the leader and the president, or basically the caretaker of that state. And he met with Umar ibn Khattab, and he saw Umar ibn Khattab and how he's kissing his children. And the Prophet and this man that works as a leader of the Muslim, as one of the Muslim estates, he basically says, "Inna li walada wa la af'alu bihi hada." I have a boy, I have a child, and I don't do this to them. I don't show this hugging and kissing nonsense to him. And then he tells him, Umar ibn Khattab, he says to him, "You are now I'm basically absolving you of your responsibility. In a nicer way, I am firing you. Because if you cannot show kindness to your own son, how can you show kindness to the Muslim community that you're taking care of?" Imagine Umar ibn Khattab firing somebody he himself hired, because he would not kiss or hug his children. And imagine if this same ruling was to be done on all of us, and all of you would be fired here, including myself. SubhanAllah. So this goes to show us how far away we are from the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I don't want to be beat up after because of the time. So inshallah, I'm going to cut it off here. I encourage you to read, inshallah, more about how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ dealt. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. I gave one of the boys, he wanted to read some Quran afterwards. So inshallah, do you mind if